This project was motivated by the newly released hand tracking on the Oculus Quest, which we wanted to explore the possibilities and limitations of. The Oculus Quest uses image recognition with the 4 cameras mounted on the front of the device to track the position and orientation of the hands to visualize them in 3D. We started out by trying hand tracking ourselves, which gave us some insights towards the initial possibilities and limitations of hand tracking. This helped us to specify the areas we wanted to explore for our first study. During early exploration of the hand tracking, we identified the default pointing method as unnatural to use. We created an application where we focused on evaluating different variations of the bendcast enhancement method. Bendcast locks onto the nearest target, bending the raycast into a circular arc. The research question for this study was, in the context of hand tracking pointing, how does bendcast behavior and visualization variables affect task completion time, error rate, and preference? 24 participants took part in the study, each completing all 4 conditions in a controlled, randomized order. The results show a clear tendency towards curved being preferred. The results also show a slight tendency towards heavy snapping not being preferred. The motivation for this study came from our collaborative partners at Unity Studios, who primarily uses a Quest for developing VR training simulations. We created an application containing 3 direct object interaction scenarios that we wanted participants to use with both hand tracking and controllers. The 3 interactions involve grasping objects, pushing buttons, and rotating an object. In the context of VR training scenarios, we explored whether there are singular interactions that are found to be suitable alternatives. Due to the COVID-19 lockdown, the study was conducted online, where we measured 3 things: time completion, total pinches, and preference. Looking at time completion and total pinches, we see that hand tracking yielded slower completion times and required more interactions than controllers. Looking at participants' preference, we see that controllers were preferred in all scenarios, although the button scenario did show some promise in being used with hands. Some participants stated that the tracking instability of hand tracking was the main reason they preferred controllers. One participant said, "If the quality of the tracking was the same for hands and controllers, I would probably prefer hands in any context for pushing buttons." For our third study, we focused on the general tracking stability of hand tracking. We created an application consisting of the same 3 scenarios as our previous study, but this time we only wanted participants to use hand tracking. The study focused primarily on tracking stability and participants' preference. Looking at the data, we see that participants on average lost tracking 14.43 times per minute during interactions. After a participant had completed a scenario, they were asked, "Would you prefer using controllers over hand tracking for the task you just did?" 70% of participants preferred hands over controllers for the button interaction, indicating the button interaction as having the most potential for being used with hand tracking. Study 2 and 3 have shown that hand tracking is unstable, limiting comparison between interactions. Better comparison would require more stable tracking, and therefore, these 2 studies should be considered as comparison between 2 tracking technologies. We did see some potential for hand tracking when it comes to pointing and pushing buttons, suggesting directly pushing buttons has potential for use despite tracking flaws. There is still a long way to go for hand tracking before it can reach the same stability as controllers and achieve a confident interaction comparison.